Hi everyone, it's Carolyn here to share another channeled message from the Light Keepers, a group of angelic beings who I channel for your awakening and ascension journey support. So today we're going to talk about where the ego is now. It's a super important part of our journey, and a lot has changed in 2021, particularly within the last couple of months with respect to where the ego is presently, not only in yourself, but within the collective. So we're going to talk about that. This is a really powerful channel in my estimation. There's probably not a lot I need to bring through afterwards, but as always, what we'll do is we'll see if they bring something through that they want to discuss out of this. But again, this is about where the ego is today in the collective and in you. So what it's going to do is it's going to give you a little bit of understanding of the role of the ego, understanding of the ego's place in past and also now. It's also going to give you an understanding of how it impacts us in ways that actually weren't intended, and how things are shifting and changing now in these huge ascension energies that we've been having in 2021. I'm also going to hopefully try to explain to you my experiences with my ego and how I have seen shifts and changes that have literally been remarkable over the last few months. And again, remember, these are energies that are coming in to assist in this shift and change. So I'll talk more about that. I'm going to go into the channel first. It's pretty lengthy, so as I always say, go get your favorite drink and kick back and take a listen. So I'm Carolyn. I'm a channel. I'm a distance energy healer, and I'm a spiritual awakening mentor. And I offer these channels to help you along your ascension and awakening journey. So, as I always say, I hope you take one or two little things away to add to the puzzle of your own soul journey. So thank you so much for being here today. And I think in this video, I just want to say real quickly, I hit 5,000 subscribers, and I want to thank you so much. I'm not one to constantly look at subscriber numbers, but I do keep track in a general way. But I actually got a picture of it the other day where I hit 5,000. So thank you so much for sharing my videos and liking them and just being here. That's the most important part, is that you're just here and you find some value in them. So thank you so much. It's been quite a journey over the last few years to to see the audience grow. So again, it encourages me to keep going. So with that today, I'm going to go ahead and read the channel, and then we're going to go ahead and see if we get anything else. All right, here we go. The ego is shattering, we find, but never will it be blind. It is learning that it is always to take a back seat to allow the higher of you to drive. But it will fight and fuss and poke and prod. Oh, yes, it will do. For it is part of the human journey, but it's taken over from what it was meant to be in time. A guidance system it was at once, but not one that would control your every move in your day, which is where the ego sits now, we find, for most of humankind, emoting and crying out, wishing for its own way. Focused on the hurt and suffering and anger and jealousy of the things done to the individual, and wrapped up in a whirlwind, we find. It will take you only into your mind, stuck there of thinking instead of feeling ways. And you can look outside of your own door too and see the ego at work in every single one of you, some more than others. The great divisions are egoic in time, all constructed out of separation. For the ego loves to feel protective of its human in its day, but it has whipped itself up in a frenzy, and then most of humankind becomes out of control, and it takes the human down the rabbit hole. Whirlwind of emotion and acting out, then it is. This is where the violence and trouble and trepidation and fear and anger and destruction comes in humankind's way. For it is about the me first, I only attitude we find. The ego is egoic, yes, in its own mind. So understand, what you see outside is not the way it was intended and wasn't back in the day at one time. There was a time when humans came into a great understanding where the higher self led in many of the collectives and the cultures of the old times. You see it, you know, and you have studied it too. They knew the ways of bringing the ego along, yet allowing it to take its rightful place, which is not about extinguishing the ego, for that is only a fighting energy that will rob you blind. Speak to it gently and let it know that the higher self will always be leading the way. For this is about a balancing act, for the higher self coming up from being covered up in time by the heavy egos in one way or another in each individual of humankind. And rise it does, oh, it is true, the higher self will start to come to the surface and then fly above, floating on the top while the ego quakes in its day, understanding its power is only to follow the higher self, supporting instead of ravaging the journey of the human. For when the ego takes a back seat and calmly sits enjoying the ride, it will look out the window and often at times notice something that may be important too. But it is typically a quiet passenger, holding an energy in the human that helps make decision-making easier in your day, not what you have found in modern society and how ego has taken away. You see it in the split and the divide, the anger and the struggle and frustration, the me-first attitude, and no one else is right, nor am I connected to anyone else in time. But this is changing and shifting. You know this, for you have felt it. The energies over the last few months, particularly 2021, the ego has been confronted with new energies coming into the human. And you are less activated by the ego, and you know it too, but it is hard to explain and understand, to describe what you feel differently and what you are going through. But you know and you feel it, and you are less triggered by others in time. The energies are ripe for the ego to take its rightful place. Part of the human experience it is, but it is just a portion of what assists the human in their way. Given way too much credit, and it has been blown out of proportion. But now these energies coming in are displacing the ego and sending you into a higher vibration in your day. With the work that you've done, you will still continue to unwind the things from your past, things in this incarnation and other lives. So emotion will come up, for this is inside work we've always said, but it is the outside situations and how you feel about yourself that the ego can contribute to. As the energies assist you in these past months and further in 2021 in time, you will be allowed to ascend further in your day. So then, after they spoke, then I'm speaking, because the information, again, is channeled information, but it runs through me. So now I start talking. And I said, okay, so again, you're showing this visual to me. These heat shields coming off of a rocket. And this metaphor has been used before. It's like we're shedding parts of our ego constructs. And they say, yes, this is how it works. The ego is there too, but it is all of this film that has built up over eons of time and not understanding how connected you really are. And now the ego is dropping off in many ways. The beating down of yourself. These energies will not allow this anymore. For you will be presented with your work of the things that you know no longer serve you, and about how you feel of your own self. For this is key. How do you feel about yourself? The ego has created these things in your way. Regardless of what has happened to you in the past of your incarnation, it is about what you feel deep inside, not only of yourself, but the outside world too. The energies will bring you more inside to not allow the focus on the outside world. But this does not mean that you do not care about the collective. It will bring you more deeply inside of you and helping you in understanding that it is all about unity, the one unconditional love. So as these energies come in, they displace the ego. The heat shields fall off in time, and off you go and rocket with the higher self leading in the way. No longer defined by the constructs or the fear or the anger and the trepidation you see out there, we say too. It is like the swimmer swimming through the waves, parting the sea for you to grow in the divineness of you. For you feel it, and you know that you feel more comforted. For the ego constructs are breaking down, the heat shields falling off the rocket of you, allowing you to move faster up into the heavens, the higher dimensions in time. For it is external constructs, the belief systems that humankind has created out of the egoic ways, the separation and the duality of humankind. But it is not accurate, for the ego has helped build this today. And as you awaken further, guided into the ascension from these energies coming in, further into 2021, you will see even more of this setting aside of the things that trigger you in the outside of you, the rest of humankind. And the suffering you have felt internally, where the ego has taken and knotted you up. And then I say, yes, the ego is that whole fight and flight thing, the anger, the frustration, the jealousy, the fear, all of that, the constructs. And the ego takes that and just chews on it and eats it. And basically overreacts is what I'm picking up. I mean, the ego is so on overdrive for so many people right now. And with the awakening journey, the ascension journey, it's really about putting the ego in its place through the energies and through the work that we do. So we also have the ego that has come in and created how we feel about ourselves and how we have, kind of tamped down our potential because of what the ego has created as mind thoughts and that are on repeat, as you said, and they turn into a pattern. And as a result, the ego just continues to guide us in a way through our life until we start realizing and moving through this journey with the higher self starting to lead the way. And that it's not really true. But these energies right now are powerful in helping us step back from the egoic ways of operating and really helping become even more of that observer. The observer to our own feelings, our own desires, our own wishes, our own understanding of the beauty of who we truly are, and breaking that down. Again, those heat shields coming off the rocket booster so we can fly. And it's been very, very powerful in the last 3 months. And I very much am getting, after the solstice, we're going to have more of these energetic events that are going to assist us to allow the higher self to move into, you just said, a stronger position. Yes, a stronger position of guidance for the human. Yes, that's what you're saying. But we're also going to see the ego fighting in other individuals and in humankind, very much fighting. And it just feeds. The ego feeds on fear, anger, all of the things that are presented to us from the lower energies, through things like the media, politics, religion. It goes on and on. There's a lot of projection out there. It's like throwing the tiger meat all the time, like constantly feeding. And so the tiger is the ego in our metaphor, wanting that food. And so the ego feeds on what is presented in our external world to us through media, through our systems, through our constructs, through our political systems, etc. And those are belief systems that we're shedding. And as we do that, the ego doesn't have really anything to feed off of externally. And now, when we're talking internally, what actually occurs there is now we have to also come to terms with how we feel about ourselves too. And so there's two, I'll just say, pathways that you're showing me where the ego really tries to maintain control. One is the internal part of us that tells us who we are, tells us whether we're worthy or not, tells us whether we're worthy of love, of joy, of happiness, of abundance. And then there's the external world pounding it into the ego, feeding basically the ego. So that's what you're showing. The external world, all the constructs, feeds the ego. Like the tiger you're showing, the tiger getting the meat, getting thrown the meat constantly and feeding that tiger, that ego. And then what happens is that's used to fuel the inner ego to keep us small. Oh my gosh, this is fascinating, and I have so many chills. And now, with these energies, this can't happen any longer, this natural process. But again, we have to come along for the journey, and we're doing that through our work in the awakening ascension process that is presented to us. And again, I'll go back to, even self-care practices in general, also being aware of what's going on in our journey, being aware of what our feelings are that are coming through, doing the work to feel them, to understand them, to process them. And we've talked about what doing the work is. It's feeling what's coming up to you to process. So much of it is individual, understanding of self, going inside and understanding why we feel what we feel, knowing that emotions and past lives and all these experiences and relationships, all of these things are coming up for us to experience oftentimes again, or to at least recognize and have the emotion behind it, or have the experience again, or close out those relationships. There's a lot going on here with respect to what the energies are now allowing us. And so much of this foundationally is rooted in the ego and how the ego has been fed. This is what you're saying, and I have chills, how the ego has been fed. And that's key here. So what we're finding then is, as the fuel to the ego is no longer allowed by the outside constructs that have defined us for so long, then guess what? We start taking in inner fuel, the higher self, the soul self, the inner fuel, tamping down the ego. And then those energies assist us in moving forward as well. Like we said, putting the ego in the back seat where it actually belongs. We're not going to get rid of the ego. Actually, in reality, what you've always said to me is that with the ego, we must treat it with love and respect as well, but also allowing it to come along for the journey, but having it be in its rightful place. Having it be in its rightful place. And it has not been for eons. And then the light keepers say, you have understood in time why you see where humankind is. It has tamped down your potential, your abundance, all the things that are beautiful for you and that you were meant to create. And many of you are coming out now from under its rule and understanding this better, we say. But do not fight the ego, for that will only fuel the fire. Love yourself for every part of you that you are in your day. It is about understanding that the divineness of you is supported by the energies to allow you to assist to grow more in being guided by the higher self of you. For this is why you start to feel differently about the things that surround you, your belief systems and constructs, we say. For the ego has taken the back seat. This is an inside job, as we have always said. For the ego is no longer being fed in the way that it has been by the outside world and by the choices you make as a human. And as this happens, you can go into your own deep inside so much more easily and understand who you truly are. Working through the things that are personal to you and the experiences you've had, the past lives, the relationships that have come your way, allowing you now to look deeply inside yourself. And the ego has been the one that has told you it's selfish and self-centered to focus on yourself. And oh no, it is not. For as you create the divineness from deep inside, you will become the phoenix rising out of the ashes over eons of humankind. We leave you in light and love this day, now and forevermore. The light keepers. Okay, so that's the channel. I have so many chills on this. I love this channel. So I want to repeat what I think I might have mentioned in a past video. This is a fantastic exercise it's a visualization. When you get into a situation where you're really kind of uncomfortable, maybe in how you interacted with someone else, how you may have reacted to a situation, and as you feel that discomfort, because we become more sensitive to our own actions and feelings, as you start noticing that, this is a great exercise. Take a look at where the ego was in that situation. So this is really kind of a reflective exercise after the situation has happened. Now, it would be really great if you could do it while the situation is occurring. So you might want to consider that as well. So take a car, take a vehicle. Okay, that's our life journey. All right, that's us. That's our life journey, kind of the human, right? That's the human journey, is the car. But who's driving, right? Well, guess what? For most of humankind, the ego has been sitting in the driver's seat driving. And the higher self, who knows where it is? Could be the passenger seat, but it could be in the back seat, and it could possibly be even shut in the trunk. So, in the situation that you've just encountered that has made you feel, they just said unease. Typically that would be the case, like some kind of unease. And again, this takes reflection on your part to say, well, I might not have just behaved the way that I really feel like I should have. So again, this is inner reflection. And then you can use this exercise. Where did the ego sit in this? Where did the higher self sit in this? Where are they sitting in the car? The car that is your journey. The car that is you, the human living this experience. So the ego, in many cases, is always driving the car, right? But as we go through awakening and ascension, what we realize is, you know what? I'm starting to feel the ego sitting as a passenger in the seat next to me, in the front seat, or in the back seat. And every scenario is going to be different. So, is the ego driving the car in the scenario you're in, or is it sitting in the front seat? You're driving, okay, the higher, meaning the higher self of you, is starting to drive, but the ego, very likely sitting there poking with the elbow and putting on the brake on the front seat. You know how that happens when somebody's trying to drive and you're so used to driving that you're driving in the passenger seat, right? You're putting on the brake when you come to a stop sign, but you're not the driver. Okay, so the ego can still be doing that, very much influencing the driver and driving you crazy, right? So the higher self maybe is in that scenario driving, but the ego was in there poking in that scenario. Or in that case, maybe you performed really well in a super sensitive situation that normally the ego would have been totally controlling. And now you realize when you visualize this using this exercise, wow, the ego was sitting in the back seat, just like a nice passenger. Like they said, looking out the window going, look at that beautiful scenery. Oh, by the way, you might want to know this. Or is the ego also still poking at you? And every scenario will be different. Is that ego sitting in the back seat, kicking your seat and poking at you in the back of the head? So remember, the ego will always be there, but what's its role in that scenario? What's that role? Visualize this, because you're going to know. And then it gives you an easier way to kind of reflect on all parts of you, and maybe where you really need to take a look at triggers for the ego. And then you'll start seeing patterns. But this is such a great visualization. It's about who's driving the car. Is the higher self of you starting to drive the car of you? Or is the ego in that situation driving the car? Or where does the ego sit? Where does the higher self sit too? Like I said, maybe it's in the trunk. For a long time, the higher self has kind of been in the trunk, right? Now we're consciously becoming aware that we're being led by our higher self. So this is a great exercise for you to use, and I would highly recommend it. I've been using it myself since it came through a couple weeks ago. So the other thing I want to mention today is just my personal experience. And again, like they say, this is so hard to explain. So what I have noticed since April is these massive energies that I have very much physically felt, and then I felt the shift and change go with it, have been ego impacting, because I've changed my habits on things that kind of were ingrained in me. One in particular, completely shifted. I never could have imagined that happening. So things that are ingrained in you that you're kind of like, yeah, I don't know if that really serves me anymore. And mine, I've told you this before, is, you know, I like to have my glass of wine on the weekend or go out to dinner and have drinks. And I have found I can't drink anymore. I mean, I can't drink at all anymore. And I have, experiences that aren't favorable when I do. And that's, I'm no youngster, and it's been the norm for me to be able to have a drink or two on the weekend. I can't do it anymore. Needless to say, that's an ego thing, right? That the ego has been pulling me into keep wanting to have those drinks on the weekends. And not there's anything wrong with that, but for me, it doesn't work anymore. And it's been made very clear to me that no, this isn't going to work for you. And so what's happening is the ego also gets involved in our habits, just so you know that. I have now drifted away from the desire over the last few months to have any drinks at all. I've been in circumstances where I've been at a wedding reception, where I've been out to dinner with friends who I used to really have a blast with, and I still do, but now it's from a different perspective. Totally totally different. And I have just as much fun. But for me, that's one of the things where the ego just kept pulling me into that, right? It didn't serve me. The other part is I'm now becoming much more of an observer to all of the things that used to emotionally trigger me. And I noticed that with not only just family members, but other situations in general. Things that might have set me off a little bit. I'm pretty chill as it is, but we all have our stuff where it's like, bam, we'll just go. And whether it's an internal, we'll just go, or external. And what I've realized is how tamped down this is. It's like the ego of me has been put in the back seat. Okay, I'll just use my same visualization. It's been put in the back seat, and it's that nice passenger looking out the window saying, oh, isn't that a pretty scenery out there? And by the way, did you see that beautiful bird? So I have had massive shifts and changes in my awareness in how the ego is working within me. And I use this visualization all the time now. And I can't begin to tell you how different I feel. I also have a personal situation where it has been more profound than anything I have ever seen. I have no more angst. I have no more suffering. I have no more pain. I have no more ego making me small and feeling unworthy of this personal situation that I'm in. And it goes on and on and on. And that has just shaken me. And now I don't feel that way anymore. It's all just like the heat shields have just fallen off and I feel like I'm rocketing forward. Now, what I will say to you is, I'm going to still have times where that'll poke back in, I would imagine. I mean, granted, in this incarnation, I've not had this journey before, so I don't know if that's the case, but I do feel like, we will continue to have, hey, are you sure? And that ego that's kicking you from the back seat, kicking your seat as you're driving, right? So just know that you may still have a poking in, but the thing is, we are in these energies right now of massive shift and change, and so much has to do with where the ego sits. And as I said, remember, the ego is constructed for the most part. It's not what it was meant to be, all right? It's been constructed and blown out of proportion. Remember the tiger getting fed all the time, and the more you feed it, the more it roars, right? Because it wants more. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. I hope you've learned something that you can take away for your own journey, because this ego component right now is massive in 2021. I think you'll be able to reflect on some of what's occurred with you. I think also very recently within the last few months, because remember, so much of my videos have had to do with the energies coming in. Well, these energies coming in are assisting us in the higher self leading the way and bumping out that ego, taking its rightful place, the higher self in each of us. And it's a journey, an individual journey for each of us. But these are the times we're in. So I'll leave you with my website, purplerainhealing.com. I would love to work with you. I have channeled messages in all of my sessions. That's what I do. I channel your spirit team, your angels, your guides, and your higher self to assist you on your life journey. Whether you add distance energy healing to that, or you want to do spiritual awakening mentoring, or you want to have a soul journey session with Celeste and me, this will assist you in your journey forward as you continue to awaken and ascend. It really helps put the past, the present, and some of the future together. And I also bring through past lives, which is a specialty of mine, to assist you in understanding what's going on in your current journey. So past lives, yeah, you may say, well, that's fun to know, but it applies. They apply. The past lives that come in help you understand who you are from a soul perspective and help you understand what's happening now, whether it's emotional, physical, relational, your journey forward. So with that today, I would love to work with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for helping me to get to 5,000 subscribers. That's a big deal for me. And again, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next video.